Hello everyone, this is my video on my helicopter animation. This is part 1 of a tutorial and this is the CSS video. I will explain what CSS does in terms of animation and how it makes the entire helicopter. So we'll look through it part by part. The first part is the body. The body is the canvas. If you're a painter, you always need a canvas. In coding, you always need a body. And the next piece of code is Keyframes Land. Keyframes means animation. And you can see over here, you have 0%, 50%, and 100%. These percentages are how far in the animation has gone. So the start of the animation, which is 0%, has this color. The half of the animation is this color, and when the animation is finished, it goes back to the original color. The next one is helicopter. I have placed the entire sequence of parts into one folder called helicopter, so when you animate that, every single part moves. The next part is the fuselage. It is the oval which is in the helicopter, this large oval where everything is stored. You can see that you need quite a lot of attributes to make this oval. You need the width, the height, the border radius, which is how curvy it is, the background color, the border, the Z index, which means does it show over other materials, the position, and the top and left. Now you can see that the animation is starting to work for night and day, which is going back to this Keyframes Land. The next part is rotor mount. The rotor mount is actually invisible, but is very helpful in keeping the rotor, which is spinning, in place. Next is the back. The back is this long rectangle behind the oval, which stores my name, part of the stripe, this triangle, and the small rotor at the back. The next one is the conjoiner. The conjoiner is also invisible, but it's quite useful. When you draw a rectangle, you normally have 4 sides, so the conjoiner removes the last side, so you have a smooth connection with the oval and the rectangle, which is the tail. Speaking of the tail, the next is the tail. The tail is the rectangle at the back, and you can see this has much more code. This is because the tail is quite complicated, as it also has the triangle, which is very hard to code in with CSS. The next is tail white, which is kind of meaningless, but it helps to keep this triangle centered. The next is the stripe. You don't really need a stripe on a helicopter, but the stripe adds a nice look to the helicopter and makes it more enjoyable to look. The stripe is this red line going down the helicopter. The next is the rotor. The rotor is the spinning part at the top of the helicopter. When we reach the end, we will see how it's animated, and it's quite interesting. Now we have the small rotor. The small rotor is the rotor at the back. The line simply spins around very quickly, like so. Then we have the rotor hole. The rotor hole is the hole where the rotor spins, which is kind of like in its name. Please give a moment to appreciate how much code is needed for one piece. The next is the landing gear. The landing gear is this line, another line, and finally one line going across, which is the part that touches the ground. There are 3 lines needed to make the landing gear of a helicopter, which is why you have landing gear 2, and gear bottom. The next is the window. The window is the transparent part of the helicopter where you can see the man. I can show you that when I remove the window, that everything goes out of whack. This is very important to note, since if you want to try an animation of yourself, if you remove one element, every single part of the animation will suddenly go weird. The man, for example, is now on top of the helicopter and the helicopter is below the ground. But when we make the window come back, suddenly everything's perfect. The next is letter. Letter is where my name is written. It's on the stripe here. The next is the ground. In the original plan, I was planning for the ground to reach right across the screen, but then it's not really mobile friendly, so I just had a short stripe which looks much more professional. If you're wondering why the helicopter is not perfectly centered on the helipad, is that it doesn't fit on my website. By the way, you can check this out at my website and play around with the takeoff and land buttons. The next is the man's head. The man's head is not really the head, it's just this red circle which looks like a helmet. And then to give it the illusion that it looks like a helmet, I put the visor. Finally, you have the man. Again, this is not really the man, it's just a black rectangle over here. Now we have the helipad. The helipad is this black sort of half circle. On the helipad is my name, or rather my copyright, programmed by VIA. Speaking of which, here are the letters where I have written programmed by VIA. Now you get to the interesting part, the buttons. Stop BTN means the land button. Stop BTN to hover means that when you hover over the button, it changes. If you look, when you put the mouse over the button turns a different color, a darker shade of green. The same applies for the start button. The start button has a different color. The background color is #33FF33, and then it changes over here to background color green, darker. Now we come to the really interesting part of the total animation, the animation itself. So now you have Keyframes Main 1. This is the actual animation of the helicopter. This is how the helicopter moves up, goes left, exits the screen, then comes back from the top. Then it lands smoothly back on the helipad where it started. But of course a helicopter can't fly without spinning rotors, which is where keyframe spin comes in. Now, this is not how you think it works. The keyframe spin doesn't actually make the rotor spin. Instead, it gives an illusion that the rotor is spinning. I'll show you this in an example. This is what's happening, really, in slow motion. The rotors are actually getting shorter and longer, which gives the illusion that it's spinning. This is actually what's happening. But when you speed up the animation, the human eye tricks you, so it looks like it's spinning. By the way, this is called JavaScript. It will be coming later in the next part of my tutorial. Finally, we have keyframe small rotor. This is the line at the back that spins. And then we have Keyframes Land. You can see there's only one line, 100%, top 305 pixels, left 1110 pixels. Sorry, 1100 pixels. This means that when you click land, the helicopter will immediately return to this spot. If you look at the animation closer, you'll see that there's three parts, 0%, 50%, and 100%, much like the night animation at the top. Keyframe small rotor means that the line at the back will spin 360 degrees in one animation cycle. This keyframe's main one is much more complicated. The helicopter first has to start. That's the first one. Then the helicopter has to move up and tilt forward, which is the second one. Then the helicopter has to leave the screen, which is the third one. Then you have to make the entire helicopter disappear from you, which is the fourth one. Then the helicopter has to shoot back to the other side, which is the fifth one. Then the helicopter has to come down, which is the sixth one. And finally, the helicopter has to stay for a couple seconds. Let's look in order at what's happening. Stage 1, Stage 2, Stage 3, Stage 4, Stage 5, Stage 6, and Stage 7. So, I hope you liked this video. Please keep in mind that all of this would not be possible without HTML, which I will teach in the next video. Thank you for watching, and visit my website by going to www.via.com. Here, move with animation. I will be. This is the previous video. Be sure to see this, since this is the introduction of the entire helicopter. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow in the HTML coding sequence.